Hello everyone, this is Simon, or this video is going to go over your close read focus annotations for the Telltale Heart. What we're going to do to start this off, as with other close read assignments, we're going to navigate right to wherever it says skill focus and click on split screen mode. After that, we are going to have our annotation button on. Notice if it is orange, it is on. We're also going to want to turn our numbers button on. With that, we have 3 focus questions to go over. Let's read over question 1. What central ideas about the narrator of The Telltale Heart does Edgar Allan Poe intend readers to infer based on text evidence throughout the story? Based on what he does, what he says, and what he doesn't say, describe the narrator's state of mind in the aftermath of committing murder and what this suggests about his character. Use the strategies you learned about making inferences. First, find facts, details, and examples that can help make a reasonable guess. Second, use your own knowledge, experiences, and observations to figure out things the author doesn't directly state. And third, read closely and critically, thinking about why the author provides certain details and information but not others. Cite text evidence and write annotations to explain your understanding. So with this one, I'm going to focus in on paragraphs 1 and paragraphs 2 because that is the aftermath of the murder. Here's where he is directly talking to us. And again, we're thinking like from a jail cell. After that, we'll review paragraphs 13 and 15 to see what he almost got away with, and then paragraphs 17 and 18 to make that actual inference. What is not being said, and really developing a larger theme to the story. What's the takeaway? So now let's check out paragraphs 1 and 2. True, nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am, but why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. So I'm going to click right here, but why will you say I am mad? And using the yellow color, the narrator is trying to prove to the reader that he is not quote unquote mad or crazy, as we would refer to in English. Looking at text inference, he tells us, hey, I am not crazy, I am just nervous right now. He tells us too, why is he nervous? He has this disease that's made his hearing acute stronger. So strong he can hear everything in heaven, earth, and in hell. How then am I mad? And any reasonable person would realize, hey, he's got some mental issue, and in fact, through his own words, shows that he is crazy. This I'm going to do one big highlight. What the narrator provides as text evidence to support the idea that he is not crazy backfires and in fact not shows but proves that he is quote unquote mad. And the reason we're saying that again, quote unquote, for mad is because it's not the English idea of being angry, but it's like the English being Britain or British idea of being crazy instead. So not mad out of anger, but mad craziness. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain. So what's the idea? What landed him in jail? But once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object, there was none. Passion, there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold, I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. One of his eyes resembled that of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man and thus rid myself of the eye forever. So, right here is where we hear the first instance of the crime he committed. The narrator devised a plan to kill the old man. We'll add, he decides to kill the old man because of his vulture eye. We've discussed the idea that this vulture eye is actually a blind eye, so it becomes ironic too. If you're getting mad at this old man for staring at you, in the end, this eye doesn't even have any sight to it. What becomes even a little bit more, you can say, horrifying or adding to that idea of suspense is the reasoning for killing the old man. Notice there was no real object to it. There was no passion behind it. In fact, I loved him. He never did me wrong. He never insulted me. I didn't even want his money. In the end, I killed him because of his eye. The narrator does not have any justified reason. Justified, I'll even say justified or slash sane reason for killing the old man. His own words. He states he loved the old man. He never wronged him. He never insulted him. And did not even want his money. Further proving that he is insane. You could think like a just reason for wanting to kill him. Maybe he insulted a family member. Maybe he hurt him and he wanted revenge. But in this case, there is no revenge apparent. We've read the story. We know how he murders him, and we'll go back in another set of the focus questions to actually look at that. Let's jump ahead to 13 and 15. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the board so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught all. Ha, ha. Even that, him laughing in this moment, that's something a crazy person would do. In this case, he's gotten away with the perfect crime. Suffocates the old man, chops up his body, no blood anywhere. Notice it all got caught in a tub. Deposits him, hides the body under the floor. Perfect crime, there is no evidence. The narrator gets away with the perfect crime. He is able to hide the body, and there is no evidence left behind. With that, create node. I'm jumping over 14. This is just kind of like a time pass. So night ends, morning comes, the police show up. Even notice what he says to begin 15. I smiled. He knows he can get away with this. For what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, because a neighbor last night reported there was a shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed them his treasures secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, even says he has a perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. Smiling at the start, I have no fear. I had perfect triumph. Very clear in 15. He thinks he has gotten away with this. I smiled for what I had to fear. The narrator believes he has gotten away with the crime. I'm going to copy and paste this because I'm going to use it too, just as further evidence. So create note there. In the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, I placed my own seat on the very spot which reposed the corpse. So copy and paste over. He has gotten away with the crime. Here he begins to showboat and sits over the dead body. He's even got a great excuse. That shriek in the middle of the night was my own in a dream. I freaked out. The old man, where is he? Oh, he's absent in the country. He is on vacation. In the end, going into 16 and 17, here's where we make our inference at the end. Again, from the start, we know he is crazy. He tells us directly with the text evidence. You might have to infer it a bit. Gets away with the perfect crime. You think he's in the clear, but what gives himself up in 17 through 18? No doubt, I now grew very pale. He's starting to hear a sound, but I talked more fluently and with a heightened voice. Yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much such a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. This was the same sound he heard right before the old man died. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I arose and argued about trifles in a high key and with violent gesticulations. He's giving himself up. He's starting to ramble, starting to shake his hands, but the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides as if excited to fury by the observations of the men. But the noise steadily increased. Oh God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore. He's losing it. I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting and grated it upon the boards, but the noise arose over all and continually increased. It grew louder, 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 and still the men chatted pleasantly. Only the narrator hears the voice, not the police officers, and smiled. Was it possible they heard not? Almighty God, no, no, they heard, they suspected, they knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought and this I think. But anything was better than this agony. He's in pain. Anything was more tolerable than this derision. He thinks they're lying to him. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die, and now again hark, louder, 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 louder. Villains, I shrieked, dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks, here, here. It is the beating of his hideous heart. So I admit the horror. I admit the crime. In the end, what is the sound the narrator's actually hearing? Well, he hears something going louder and louder and louder. Something similar to the ticking of a watch covered in cotton. This is how he described how he described the old man's old heart before he died. So I'm going to infer, because he's hearing the same heart sound, that in fact he is hearing his own heartbeat getting louder and louder and louder. He's feeling the sense of guilt, and guilt is what in the end makes him turn himself in. It was a low, quick, dull sound, much such a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. Sorry, getting a little tongue-tied right there. This is the same way the old man's heart was described as sounding before the narrator killed him. I'm going to take it from this part, because then this is where we see him starting to freak out. The narrator begins to feel guilty. His heart races. I'll say his heartbeat races. His heartbeat races, and he believes the police can hear the beating of the old man's heart. In fact, we know this cannot happen. The old man is definitely dead, and it is the narrator hearing his own heartbeat. The narrator mistakes the sound he hears as the old man's heart. Narrator mistakes the sound he hears as the old man's heartbeat. While in actuality, it is his own. Narrator mistakes the sound he hears as the old man's heartbeat with what in actuality is his own. Now let that create note. Again, it is a sense of guilt that causes the narrator to turn himself in. With that, we see it in our very last paragraph. The central idea that is developed is that guilt will make a person confess. We can also say another idea, because we want multiple central ideas, notice plural. Another idea could be that guilt will drive a person, we'll say it too with his words, quote unquote, mad. Two central ideas developed, notice off of an inference and also off of what textual evidence is given to us from the author. With that, let's move on to number 2. What motivation for his actions does the narrator offer in paragraph 2? How does the narrator likely intend his audience to react to his motivation for murder? And what actual reaction will readers likely have based on the details he provides? As always, use text evidence, explore contrasts between what the narrator intends to demonstrate about his character and what he ends up revealing in this paragraph. So we're really focused on 2. We've already talked about it, so let's just review. Again, he's trying to prove that he is not crazy. In the end, here is his plan, leads him to killing the old man. Is his reasoning justified? Again, we talked about the idea of justification to this. Maybe he hurt a family member. Maybe he insulted me. Maybe I wanted to steal his money. Notice, none of these are good reasons for killing someone, but it's ones we can wrap our heads around. I understand. I've heard this in other movies. I've seen it in other books, this idea. However, his idea, I am just killing this old man because I don't like his eye, is not sane, is not rational. In fact, it detracts. It does the opposite of what you would say about him. So yeah, with 2, I don't really think there's anything more to do than what we've already done. We did a big chunk of it with 1. And in fact, this is going to get developed further in 3. Let's check out 3. The particular character of the narrator in the story may affect what details are presented directly, as well as those the readers are intended to infer. Based on the details in the first paragraph, which we've annotated, how is the narrator relating these events? Paragraphs 3 and 4, how does this narration affect readers' impression of the narrator and interpretation of the events that have taken place? So we've got 2 more to annotate, and then that'll wrap us up for today. Let's look at 3 and 4. What is he trying to prove to us? Where do we hear this first-person narrator talk directly to the reader? What does he want us to think? Now, this is the point. You fancy me mad. The you. He's calling us out. You fancy me mad. Let's change this to a different color. Purple for no reason. The narrator believes that the reader thinks he is crazy. Kind of restating what he said back in paragraph 1. Madman know nothing You should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded. He is putting these words in our mouths. He's saying, you would have thought that I was wise. Changing this to purple again. The narrator wants the reader to agree with him that he is wise. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. Notice too the juxtaposition, the irony of this statement. The kindest I was ever to him was right before I killed him, probably the most unkind action. And every night about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it oh so gently. And then, when I made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern all closed so that no light shone. And then I thrust in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening, so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Ha! Would a madman have been so wise as this? So I'm hearing his story every night for a week. At midnight, stuck his head in. Took him a whole hour to finally put his head in. This is something definitely creepy. Ha! Would a madman have been so wise as this? Again, referring directly to us. The narrator is retelling the events to show that he is wise through his thorough planning. However, his plan actually shows that he is mad. Little typo on this one, thorough. A little bit earlier, I want to make note. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. Oh, you would have laughed. Actually, let's drag it all the way to cunning. The narrator believes that the reader would believe that he was a cunning person. And again, definitely not cunning, and we are not laughing as we're hearing this madman tell us or retell us his plan. And then, when my head was well within the room, I undid the lantern cautiously, oh so cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye, and this I did for 7 long nights. So no, it's not 1, not 2, not 3, but a whole week he goes through this plan. Definitely proves this murder is premeditated. It was thought every night just at midnight, but I found the eye was always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work. And again, the only reason I kill him is because I want to see that eye. For it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone, and inquiring how he had passed the night. So you see, he would have been a very profound old man indeed to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked upon him while he slept. Again, further proves the idea this is crazy. He's going in every night at a week, stares at this old man, does nothing, does not sound like a sane person. One more paragraph to annotate, and that is 4. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt, in italics, let's pay attention to this, the extent of my powers, of my sagacity. Before he murders the old man, he feels powerful. The narrator says that he has never felt more powerful than before he killed the old man. This further proves he does not have remorse and is evil. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph. And again, just further emphasizing it. The narrator feels excited over his triumph, which is killing the old man. Definitely a guilty person. To think there I was opening the door little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly as if started. So he gives a little chuckle. He says, hey, look how clever I am, and that wakes the old man. Now you may think that I drew back, but no, his room was as black as pitch, with the thick darkness, for the shutters were closed, fastened through fear of robbers, and so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it on steadily, steadily. Again, he knows tonight is the night. The old man wakes up. Tonight he will see the eye. With that, I feel like we have thoroughly answered focus question 3, and really all of our focus questions. We've seen from the start what he wants to prove. We've seen the progression of his ideas. We see how he thinks his evidence will prove that he is sane when in fact it does the opposite. In the end, we get the idea what could be a central idea or lesson of this story. I know my narrator gets away with the perfect crime. There is nothing evident to show that he was guilty of it. And in the end, he hears his own heartbeat. His own heartbeat drives him to turn himself in, proving he is guilty. And again, with that, our theme or central idea, we develop two. Guilt will make a person confess, or we could say guilt, in his case, could drive a person mad. With that, I'm ending the focus questions here. If we're meeting live time, please ask me a question if you have any. And if not, you can always email me those questions. With that, you'll close down split screen mode, click over to your writing tab, and check out your prompt. Poe's narrator insists he isn't mad, though his behavior suggests otherwise. Analyze how Poe uses the point of view of this unreliable narrator to create a feeling of horror. How does Poe develop the idea that the narrator is not sane and is in fact crazy? Use text evidence to support your inference. Make sure your response is concise, 5 to 7 sentences, and uses the race format. Before you type your final response, click open split screen mode. That way on the left-hand side, you can see the annotations you just made and transfer them over into one nice clean paragraph. When done, press submit. And as always, guys, good luck with this.